No collusion, no obstruction.
President Trump celebrates as Democrats agitate over the Mueller report that clears the president of any criminal action, but continues to leave questions to which Democrats still want answers. Hear what our analysts have to say. Plus, the death toll continues to rise among 9/11 first responders as Congress battles to restore money to the Victims' Compensation Fund.
Now, from 42nd and 2nd, this is Pix 11 News Close-Up with Marvin Scott.
Good morning. After an exhaustive 2-year investigation, the long-awaited Mueller report into Russian meddling in the 2016 election was finally released to the public on Thursday. While the 448-page report cleared the president of any criminal wrongdoing, no collusion on his part, it also did not exonerate him. Henry Rossoff has the details.
I'm having a good day, too. It was called No Collusion, No Obstruction.
President Trump cheered the findings of the Mueller report, even though it paints a potentially damaging picture of his campaign and his actions. The first 200 pages of the report explain how Russian intelligence officials tried to influence the American public. They hacked Hillary Clinton and the Democrats and tried to encourage the Trump campaign to distribute damning information. There were messages and meetings between Russian officials and the president's son, Donald Trump Jr., son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and policy advisor, Carter Page, among several others. Still, despite several campaign officials being charged with lying to Robert Mueller's team, the special counsel ultimately found, quote, the evidence was not sufficient to charge that any member of the Trump campaign colluded with the Russians.
There is a lot in this report that is damaging.
The second half of the report lays out the potentially illegal ways President Trump himself may have interfered with the Russia investigation. They include trying to influence former FBI Director James Comey when he was leading the Russia investigation and then eventually firing Comey. The report then details how President Trump repeatedly tried to get former Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who recused himself from the investigation, to get involved again. At one point, he told Sessions he thought Mueller would be the end of his presidency. Still, current Attorney General William Barr thought the president's actions were not criminal. During a news conference this morning, he lauded the president's cooperation with investigators despite the stress of the investigation.
This evidence of non-corrupt motives weighs heavily against any allegation that the president had a corrupt intent.
But that cooperation stopped short of a sit-down interview with the special counsel, and Robert Mueller's team concluded it may ultimately be up to Congress to decide the issue of obstruction.
That is why I have formally requested that the special counsel Mueller testify before the House Judiciary Committee as soon as possible so we can get some answers to these critical questions.
Thanks to Henry Rossoff for that report. Joining us now to take a closer look at the Mueller report is Alan Sanders. He's a former Time magazine senior reporter, and he's currently the professor of political science at St. Peter's University in Jersey City. And Chapin Fay, he's a Republican strategist with the Mercury Group. Gentlemen, thanks for coming in. All right, so they find no collusion, but there are 10 episodes at least where there's potential obstruction of justice. Your take on it, gentlemen?
Well, I think it's pretty damaging to the president. The first part alleges, of course, a conspiracy by Russia to thwart the electoral process here in the United States. That in itself is a revelation that is of great concern and should be of great concern to all Americans. But the second one highlights behavior by the president that comes very close or may have overstepped the line of legality. The only thing that kept the president under control, it seems, were his aides, who were more conscious of the law than the president himself seemed to have been.
Well, the last time we were on talking about this, I said the same thing. The report was going to come out. It was going to reach no real conclusions. The left's head were going to explode, calling him a criminal. And Trump and his allies were going to claim exoneration. And that's exactly where we are. And it's going to continue like this until at least Election Day 2020 and probably beyond. I think, Trump hatred trumps facts and reason in this era. And, there was no evidence of there was not enough evidence of collusion. There was also not enough evidence of obstruction. So, had there been, I think the special prosecutor would have recommended indictments, but he did not.
Well, I think there's some dispute about that.
Mueller falls short of obstruction of justice, but he seems to be passing it over to Congress. It's in their purview now whether to define obstruction.
Well, it was going to be anyway. I mean, the Congress was going to be able to do something about The Congress can, as soon as the Democrats took over, they could impeach the president today if they wanted to.
Well, I think the report makes 2 points. First, the Attorney General, before he was Attorney General, suggested that the president could not be pursued for obstruction of justice. The report makes it clear that that legal analysis is wrong. So that's point number 1 on the law. Point number 2, the special counsel highlights all kinds of episodes, 10 of them, as you pointed out, Marvin, which raise some doubts about the president's actions and whether he was abusing power. Never mind whether there was criminality. Was he abusing power? And abuse of power is an important problem in a system where you're dealing with checks and balances. So that leaves open the door for Congress, and the special counsel made very clear that Congress has the authority to pursue this further. So I would expect that that would happen.
Now, the Congress, particularly Jerry Nadler, who heads the Judiciary Committee, he's calling for an unredacted copy. I mean, you take a look at what's redacted here, a lot on issues of privacy, national security, and what else did they said? That because of grand jury testimony, they want it redacted out of here. The Democrats are holding out. They haven't taken off the table if he doesn't produce an unredacted copy that they may seek impeachment. They're not going there, but it's not off the table.
Well, look, I think redactions by the Attorney General, an officer whose interests clearly are aligned with the executive, speaks for those redactions. However, Congress certainly has much power under Article 1, Section 8 to pursue redactions. One of the powers of Congress is the power to impeach. That doesn't mean that Congress will necessarily impeach, but because it has the power to impeach, which means the power to investigate, it certainly has the power to ask for evidence, redacted evidence from the Attorney General. So I think what Congress is suggesting is let's take a look at the evidence. That may not necessarily make it to the public, but it should make it to the Congress.
Now, the Republican voice here. Now, the report shows substantial evidence of attempt to at least stop the investigation by the president, saying when he learned that Mueller was being appointed, he said, "Oh, there goes my presidency," expletive.
Well, I think that's the reaction of any president, whether they say it out loud or not in front of people. The other thing is, I think an obstruction of justice case is easier to prove than some of the other things that some of the other criminal acts that they were investigating. So had they been able to, they would have. And some of these, if you go through all the different 10 instances, I mean, these are from, staff testimony. You don't know if Trump was musing. You don't know what his tone of voice was. You don't know if he was asking, hey, what if I did this? Could I do this? Just, that's how he sort of operates, it seems like. And then a staffer goes to a reporter or goes to the grand jury and says, Trump actually said this. You don't know, and that's, I think, one of the big reasons, that is, in fact, one of the reasons there was no criminal intent. They couldn't find or prove criminal intent, rather, of the president. And so I think, that's why it didn't go as far as it did.
Critics say Attorney Barr was really acting in the interest of the president, not in the interest of the people.
Well, I think so. I think he came across in the press conference that he held before release of the report and in the so-called summary that he gave pretty much as a political hack. He tried to find elements of the report that would be positive for the president, and he emphasized those aspects, but he really didn't pay much attention to all the negative information.
But I think you'll see no one's really contradicting or saying he was wrong. I mean, clearly he was putting, it in context that, that's life, right? That's what we do. We put things in context that benefit whoever it is that we're trying to benefit or working for. But no one is contradicting him. You would have seen a lot more outrage today and this morning, and in the wake of that press conference. And I don't think there was. I mean, you see a lot of Democrats saying, put impeachment away, for now. Steny Hoyer, the majority leader, said, it's not the right time for impeachment. And I think that demonstrates and proves that this report is a big nothing.
It's not a big nothing. Impeachment is a very complicated process and it takes a lot of time. What the report does demonstrate with evidence is that the president probably abused his power. And that's the real issue. The standard should not be criminality. The standard should be, is the president actually working properly? And abuse of power is a real problem here.
On that note, we're going to take a break. A lot more to talk about in the Mueller report. Stay with us as Pix 11 News Close-Up continues. Back now with Chapin Fay and Alan Sanders. Talking about the Mueller report, they talk about that infamous 2016 Trump Tower meeting, Trump Jr., Manafort, and Russian operatives. And Mueller said he had considered charging against Junior, but in the end he did not. He felt he didn't have enough evidence. That still seems to be an issue, whether there was a meeting with operatives talking about meddling in the campaign.
Well, there's no doubt that that meeting demonstrates that Putin and the Russians were trying to infiltrate the campaign, or trying to get connections with the campaign and trying to disrupt the elections. The special prosecutor found that, of course, the participants from the Trump campaign did not really conspire in any way, and I think that's a very correct analysis. But what it does demonstrate is that the campaign principals were in many ways amateur. They didn't quite understand what they were getting into, and I think that is a major criticism of the campaign.
Well, the first point that I want to address is, the meeting, with unsavory characters. I mean, on a campaign, it's very chaotic. You're meeting with people. All sorts of people come out of the woodwork, from local campaigns on up to presidential campaigns, and you don't necessarily know who these people are. You have to be very careful and very guarded. Sometimes, unsavory characters slip through the vetting process, and you meet with them and you leave and nothing comes of it, and that seems to be what happened. And to prove, collusion or conspiracy, you have to prove intent, right? To prove a crime, and I think it's pretty clear, like you said, that there was no intent. They were just sort of meeting with people. On the second point, I totally agree. I think, and it's nothing new. This report demonstrates that the Russians were 100% trying to meddle in the United States election. And that is a huge problem, a huge issue. And one of the things I would actually like to see the president do is address that in very, in no uncertain terms, right? I mean, this aggression cannot stand to quote a past president. So I agree, and I think it's clear, and I think that the president does need to take some action on that, or at least begin the wheels on that.
Well, the first 200 pages of the Mueller report, they talk about how Russian intelligence agents did actually try to influence the election in 2016. Where do we go from here? What's the next phase? I mean, this Mueller report has spawned at least 16 or 14 other spin-off inquiries, including right here in the Southern District.
Well, I think you can expect those investigations to continue. I mean, it will be probably a slow-moving process in which the Democrats will try to exploit as much as they can. The Republicans, of course, will try to downplay all the allegations in the report, as they have done for the past 2.5 years. But it'll be basically a slow-moving, rolling process all the way to the election, where both parties will try to exploit what they can from this report for electoral purposes.
Where do we go from here? The same direction we've been traveling. This is going to keep going. Both sides are going to dig in. I think it's going to be a campaign issue for both sides as well.
But the next fight would seem to be the obstruction of justice in Congress.
Yes. The last time we spoke after the Michael Cohen testimony, I said that was Act 1 of the impeachment process play. I think we're in Act 2 now. I mean, like you said, the head of the Judiciary Committee, Congressman Nadler, has subpoenaed the full report. I think they are very slowly putting together, a case in Congress, the Democrats, to begin impeachment proceedings. I think that has always been the goal, will always be the goal, and will continue until Election Day. And if he is reelected, this will continue, and impeachment will certainly move forward. And if he is not reelected, I think their investigations will still continue, because they're going to try and put him in jail, because the hatred is so strong.
Alan, how do you believe this will affect President Trump's political future?
Well, I mean, it's not clear to me, for instance, that the president will in fact run for re-election. He's entirely capable of saying, I've tried the best, America is great, I've done all that I can do, and it's not up to my successor. On the other hand, if he decides to run for election and actually does so, as he claims, he could face a very difficult second term. The Democrats have made clear that they're going to make that election very tough. They have every intention to maintain control of the House. Nancy Pelosi has already made that very clear, and they're gearing up to maintain control of the House, and of course they will try to get control of the Senate. So either way, whether the Democrats win or lose, it will be a very contentious period for the next 2 years and possibly the next 4.
Well, the president has called us a witch hunt all along. He said, declared the other day, game over. It's not, right?
No, it's not.
Far from over.
Well, I think the game just continues as it has been going. I mean, it's taking a different path, right? It's not going towards, putting him in, trying to put him in jail. It's going towards a political process, which it always was going to do. I don't think the report affects his electoral chances one way or the other. I think we're in the same spot we were a year ago, 2 years ago, and we'll be in the same spot a year from now.
Jabin Fay, Alan Sanders, thank you so much for your insight. Always appreciate having you on the program.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
When we come back, we'll talk about the 9/11 Victims Compensation Fund. Stay with us. The number of 9/11 related deaths among first responders and people living and working near Ground Zero is almost equaling the number of people who were killed in the terror attack almost 18 years ago. It's estimated that 2,100 people have now succumbed to cancers and other illnesses related to that toxic cloud created after the attack. Thousands of survivors are still battling a variety of ill effects, and they've been receiving compensation from the Zadroga bill, the Victims' Compensation Fund, that provided $7 billion in medical compensation. With over 25,000 people receiving benefits already, the fund is running low. Congress decided to reduce benefits by 50 to 70%. Outrageous, cry those still in need. As the death toll climbs, Congress continues to quibble over reinstating those funds. Here to talk about it is Michael Barish. He's an attorney who has represented 15,000 applicants to the fund. And we have first responders, Tom Wilson, a sergeant in the NYPD, and Rob Serra, who's with the fire department, and both were at Ground Zero on 9/11 and on the pile for many days after. Gentlemen, thanks for coming in. Let's talk about now, this past week you had some good news because you finally reached that benchmark of enough votes in the House to get this thing passed, but you're still uncertain in the Senate.
That's right, Marvin. We now have 226 members of the House who have voted to reinstate and fully fund the Victim Compensation Fund, but we need another 28 senators if we're going to make this happen, and of course we need the president to sign it into law.
Do you gentlemen understand? You were down there. I mean, there are some members in the political arena in Congress who say this is a New York issue, but you had people from all over the country coming out. You guys were down there that day. Does it infuriate you that there are some members of our government who will not give you that fund?
Infuriate, but we have to educate them. There were 434 congressional districts out of the 435 congressional districts that responded to either Ground Zero or the Fresh Kills landfill. So a congressional district. So we just have to educate them and make them aware. And what we see a lot, especially, we went down to Ground Zero, went to Fresh Kills landfill. Now we're going down to Congress, down to Washington, D.C., continuously to lobby. And we just have to educate the members. And
it's an education process.
Yeah, and it's also a humanity issue. 70%. So anyone that passes away after February 15th, like my neighbor across the street, her brother, Greg Cerisi, passed away after that date, he's going to lose 70%. Can you imagine? My father, I was talking to him yesterday, he's a combat wounded veteran. He gets VA benefits for getting shot in the leg, or SSI. Can you imagine if the VA were to cut 70% of payments, or from SSI? It would be a real problem. So that's what we really have. And we see ourselves as veterans of this such epic event, 9/11.
Now, you're impacted by it as well, Fred, right?
That's correct. Yes, I was forced to retire from the fire department in 2012. So I've been working on this bill for the last 5 years with these guys. But you're right. When we were down in Washington, they do say it's a New York issue. And we like to point out to them that it was the United States of America that was attacked on 9/11. And we have people from all 50 states in this program. So we feel like Congress has a responsibility to the people that showed up that day from all over the country, that were assured by the government that the air was safe to breathe, was not given proper equipment for air that was not safe to breathe. We have a responsibility to take care of them. Because
are you in the fund? Have you?
I'm in the fund, and I'm fortunate enough. I tell people that I got sick early enough that I was compensated.
And so, how are you now? How's your health now?
My health is it's day to day, but we're all taking time bombs. The fire department, we lost 3 guys in 48 hours last week. We have 191 firefighters died already from 9/11 cancer. So,
if what Mike's figures are that just you had 10 9/11 related deaths just since April 1st.
That's right, and this was incredible bipartisan toxic dust. It didn't matter if you were white or black, Democrat or Republican. If you were exposed, you're a ticking time bomb, as Rob said. And everybody's looking over their shoulder now, Marvin, wondering not if, but when am I going to get sick? And it is, think about how unfair this is. The only thing these people did wrong was believe the EPA when they said the air is safe.
Now, you were the one who believed it. And what are the effects you have? You have a number of illnesses.
Yes, I just had surgery this past Friday. I had head and neck cancer, certified cancer, head and neck, tongue cancer. And I had my tongue cut out, an arterial graft, my wrist implanted in my tongue. And then, like many of these cancers, they're cancers on steroids. They're very aggressive. So I had to get radiation, and the radiation has damaged my jaw, so I had a bone replacement. But what I want to talk about also is, and what we talk about in Washington, this country is very divided. This bill can bring everyone together. Next week, we're going to be back down in D.C. Wouldn't it be amazing if everyone in Congress, the Senate, and the President came together to pass this bill? Because we came together as a great nation after 9/11, and that would be great to see.
That's true.
Now, how do you get the message across to those who are still holding out? How many have you missing, about 30 votes in the Senate?
We need 28 more senators to come on board. And what I've been doing, since I represent people from all over the country, I've been having the firefighters and cops who went back home after they helped New York call up their senators who always say on 9/11, we will never forget. Call them up, say, I'm a constituent. I need you to support the extension. The bill's already been made. It's a bipartisan bill, but we have some holdouts, as you said. We need the individuals from all over the country to tell their senators, hey, I need your help now. I was there for you. Now you have to be there for me.
But right now, this bill may not be as difficult to pass as the initial Zadroga bill.
Right.
That was a never-ending
Well,
battle.
we have the science now. We know, we have the statistics. It's sad, but we have the statistics to prove just how many people are coming down with cancer. Not a day goes by without one of my clients dying. I mean, think about how horrifying that is.
It gets to be a personal thing for you.
We've also proved that that it runs as well. The program runs.
Right, there's no fraud at all now.
That was the initial concern.
Of course, and I don't blame them for being worried
That's
about
right.
that.
We were down in Washington, D.C. Jon Stewart actually congratulated Donald Trump, Justice Department, because the program runs so well. It does. It runs, and it's saving lives and helping lives.
No, there was
it's a human issue.
There was a little more than $7 billion in that initial fund, which they approved. Now they say that's down to practically nothing.
Well, there's $2 billion left, but there are 20,000 pending claims, and we know there are going to be another 20,000 claims before the end of 2020 when this is supposed to close. So it's an urgency now. It's a national health crisis, and it's urgent that we extend it now.
Now, you two gentlemen, you put a human face on all of this. You know, we hear from the Michaels, we hear from the politicians, but we don't often enough hear from those who are actually on the pile. We're down there on 9/11 and what you're suffering today. Talk to us a little bit about the hardship, and maybe one of those senators out there is listening.
Well, for me, I have 3 little kids, all under 10. I suffer a lot of neurological issues, neuropathy. I have a lot of numbness, a lot of shaking. I can't walk very much. So I spend a lot of my time in a chair. So that's how I interact with my children. I haven't been able to lift them up in 4 years. So I would say to them, what would you do if it was you and if it was your kids or your friends? Because right now, like I said, my family was taken care of, but there are thousands of others that aren't. They have young children, and people are making choices. You know, there's a firefighter. He was being taken care of by his 18-year-old daughter who had to drop out of college because he had no one else to take care of him. So, you know, we can't stand for that, and we're not going to stand for that.
Yeah, I feel the effects. I'm still in active duty. I'm a police officer now out in Suffolk County. And actually, 2 nights ago, I was recognized for a Silver Shield Award back in April of last year. I saved a woman who was stabbed repeatedly, carotid artery, and then the male subject then attempted to stab me. And I don't have the time here to go into it, but it was an amazing situation. But after that situation, my whole head and neck and lungs seized up, and I had to be rushed to the hospital. So it affects me.
Well, all our good wishes to you in the months ahead. And the other day you told me you're optimistic. You think this bill will pass by October.
Well, we're going back to Washington next week. I'm pretty confident that this is going to eventually pass, hopefully by September of this year.
Okay, Michael Barish, Rob Serra, and Tom Wilson. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark.
Best of luck to you. Good health.
Right. Thank you.
And that'll do it for our program for this week. If you have any comments or wish to see this broadcast again, log on to our website at pix11.com/newscloseup. I'm Marvin Scott. Thanks so much for joining us. Happy Easter, happy Passover. Enjoy the rest of the weekend, everyone.